All right, so we are in our third little series with hopefully many more to come with a variety of special guests. But again, we're just so fortunate to have Mrs. McConville here with us again. Please, we hope that you will catch some of our other postings for Table Talks. Maria kind of talks about her personal employment experience. And then she also talks about licensure, certification, and reciprocity. So this time we're going to kind of talk about employment advocacy, past, present, and future. So we also have Angie here, my partner in crime. And so Maria, so you and I have known each other for several years. We won't say how many of those are, but we look fabulous. But the one thing I remember many years ago, and this is actually how I met Deb, but 17 years ago, you were really on the cutting edge of, spouse empowerment, employment. And there was it was the Women's Conference a few years ago. What were the initial thoughts? Like, how did that come about for you?
Wow, that's a really good question, Denise. I really think that that came about because I kept hearing spouses say things like, I'm just a spouse, or I'm just an FRG leader, I'm just a mother, or I'm just a whatever. And I thought, no, we're not just. We have great talents, skills, knowledge that we need to share and let everybody know that we are individuals in and amongst ourselves. We love our service members and we support them wholeheartedly, but we're not them and we're not appendages of them. And I think that years ago, we used to introduce ourselves, hi, I'm Maria McConville. My husband is the blah, whatever it was. And that's what spouses got used to saying. And I said, why are we doing that? We all have our own identities. And so I really thought it was important to empower spouses to say, hey, I'm Maria McConville. I'm a mother of three. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a whatever it is that makes us tick and makes us individuals. And so I really think that was the start of my journey with really trying to let the world know that we spouses have some great things to contribute besides our soldiers.
Yes, for sure. So you've been in service and serving alongside your spouse for over 40 years now?
Well, he's been in the Army 40 years. I've been married to him for 33 years and 10 months.
plus then your service as well. So what changes have you seen over the years, and where are we now regarding the drive and initiatives for military spouse employment?
Oh my gosh, things have changed immensely from when I became a spouse almost 34 years ago. Back when I married my husband and I went from being an officer in the Army myself to what we would call a dependent wife. Thankfully, now they call us family members. Just navigating the whole job search. And of course, back then we didn't have the internet. So I paid someone to do this fancy whoopie-doo resume for me, only to take my resume around and not really be able to get a job. And of course, there was no searching on the internet. So you just looked in the classifieds in the newspaper, or maybe you knew someone who you could network with. But, fast forward to the internet, fast forward to e-commerce, fast forward to entrepreneurship for spouses, things have changed immensely. When I started my own consulting business, it was about 7, 8, 9 years ago. I didn't know any resources that were out there for spouses starting their own businesses. Everything that I learned from other dietitians who had their own businesses, who were in the entrepreneurial space. Wow. And now I know that there are so many resources out there for spouses. There are organizations, there are companies that want to employ military spouses. There's so many organizations helping with job placement and skills build. And so military spouse jobs and this Army Up program is unique in that it's the one job placement. a nonprofit for spouses. A lot of other organizations help with career readiness through career exploration, mentoring, resume help. Of course, Military One Source is an organization for all military spouses that helps with so many aspects of that. But just, I would say, in the last 10 years, has the aperture really opened up for us as military spouses. And I'm so incredibly grateful to your organization and to all of the organizations that have really invested in spouses and really helped and stepped up to bat to really make it more equitable for what we're seeing in the civilian sector, where a lot of spouses are in the workplace. Now, I will say that there are times in my career that I have chosen not to work. It wasn't always the right situation for me. So I don't ever want to send the message to spouses that, if you don't work, you're not keeping up with everybody else, because there's times in this military life where it's just not the right time for us to be working. But the nice thing is that it seems more and more that if we do want to work, the resources are there for us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because Military Spouse Jobs actually has a special segue for individuals who are not actively seeking employment through Spouse Nation. So it's a training and development piece. And so it's not something that has to be, we don't work just with spouses who are actively searching or want to be placed into a position. We definitely try to include those people who we understand it may not be the right season in their life. Maybe they're having to wait till their kids go to school or whatever.
Or they live in Hawaii like I did and didn't want to work when you live in Hawaii, because who wants to work when you live in Hawaii, right?
Exactly.
And I love that about Military Spouse Jobs is the skills build, where maybe a spouse wants to change their career focus, but they don't necessarily have the education or the skills. And so that Military Spouse Jobs has that platform, like you said, through Spouse Nation, to help them build those skills. So that's really, really great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and you're so right with that. Is sometimes we go through seasons, and we might not be where we started, and we've kind of changed with either skills that we've learned by our volunteer service with our soldier. So you're absolutely right. So Maria, if you could talk to employers maybe who are not as accepting still of hiring military spouses, what would you say to them, or what would you hope to see with some of our employers that we're kind of still knocking on doors to either have those opportunities for spouses?
That's a really great question. I think that because of the internet and because so many people can telework or take their jobs with them, that we no longer are at the great disadvantage that we used to be, because a employer didn't want to invest in a military spouse only to lose them a year or two later. But that's not the case anymore. So back in 2010, I started working for a company here in the Washington, D.C. area. And of course, after 10 months of working there, my husband says, guess what? We're moving back to Kentucky. And it was a new position. And so I got my wits together and I went to my director and I said, I found out we're moving to Kentucky, but I would like to take my job with me and work from home. And they said, oh, we don't know about that. We're going to have to, go to the vice president and ask him. And they did, and came back to me and they said, we're going to give you a 90-day trial. And so we moved to Kentucky and I worked from home while Jimmy was the commanding general. So I, kind of wore several different hats. I traveled a lot for that job. And I worked for them for another 3 years until they merged with another company and kind of phased our department out. But I think that in this day and age, with the ability to move your job with you, that is a huge advantage. I also think that where a lot of spouses have gone is the entrepreneurial route. So with e-commerce, being able to have, say you're a really talented artist or crafter or something, that so many more spouses can own their own businesses. And one of the things that I have to say I've worked hard with the Army on is having home-based business reciprocity. So when on our previous session, we talked about licensure reciprocity, but the process for having a home-based business, if you lived on a military installation, was different at all the different installations. So now over the last couple of years, through the hard work with G9, they've been able to standardize that process so that if a spouse has their own business and they want to have that business at another installation that they've already been vetted for, then the process should be a lot easier. So I just think that employers should know that just because we're military spouses doesn't mean we're going to leave the company. We are, I mean, look at our soldiers. They're so loyal to the Army. We're loyal to our employers as well. And as I said in last session, we're hardworking, we're punctual for sure, we're resourceful, and we're resilient and we're flexible. So I think that military spouses bring so much goodness to the work site. And I also think the wisdom that we've gained from moving around and living in so many different situations is such a key asset to make us good employees.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I'm much more a diverse individual because of those different locations and those different life experiences that we've gained with each PCS. So this past year has been challenging for military families and particularly women in the workforce. But COVID has largely, as you mentioned, reframed the employment landscape. So spouses do have some more ability. That's one of the positives that came out of it, was some of this technology and understanding that people can work remotely. But as things continue to open up post-COVID and you get back on the road with General McConville, what are some areas that you will be addressing as it relates to spouse employment or empowerment?
Great question. Well, you know, of course, for many military spouses, spouse employment hinges on childcare. And so that was really one of the things that took a hit during COVID. Obviously, so many childcare centers closed down or had to close temporarily or reduce staff or reduce the number of children that they could take. So I think the big focus has to be on getting good and affordable childcare. I know that there's a pilot program that's being started. I don't have all the details for it, but I know that when Jimmy took over as chief of staff, childcare and spouse employment were 2 of his 5 top quality of life issues. So I think that childcare is definitely something that goes hand in hand with spouse employment. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I think that we have right now. But one of the things I do want to talk about is last week I had the opportunity to go down to Fort Belvoir, which is here in the DC area, and the USO down there opened up a co-working space for military spouses. So anybody in the area that wants to sign up and go work at this beautiful facility right next to the hospital there at Fort Belvoir, or a block down the street from the hospital, you can sign up to go and work in this co-working space. They've got internet, they've got a conference room, they've got separate cubicles, they've got these great chairs that you can sit in that have the noise cancellation, so you can have a private phone call and other people can't hear you. And they've really made it a super inviting environment for spouses who may not be able to work from home. You may have a partner who's working from home, or children who are at home, or a situation where you've got roommates and you may not be able to work from home. So this was the first. I know they're also opening one at Fort Campbell, the next co-working space. And I think this is going to be something successful, and we might see this mirrored at other installations. But it's really important that spouses take advantage of these things, because if you don't, they're going to go away. And so the USO is pleased that they've had a number of spouses come and work in their co-working space, but they'd love to see more utilization. So anybody in the DC area, please check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Denise, you visited that site, correct?
Oh my gosh, it is phenomenal. And you are so right, Maria, because the scary thing is if we don't use it, we lose it. Especially as we know, there's a lot of budget cuts because of COVID, in the military. So, we've come a long way in terms of where we're recognized for spouses to have these type of centers. So, we want to use them, so we don't lose them. So you are so right. But yes, it was phenomenal. And it's great that, you know, even for me, if I felt that I lived in that area and I just had a lot going on at home and I just needed to go to a place to, you know, to do work, it's a great center.
Yeah, I think that it's important. Some people really do work better in an office environment. And so it provides that separation between home and work, which some people really do better with. So, well, thank you so much for joining us and discussing all of these important spouse employment initiatives.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.